Yeah.
So we were talking about guitar players. I had Steve Vai on.
Mm-hmm.
Who's just a legend. I
Yes.
had bands. I had Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top on, which I could talk about cars
Yeah.
and music with him. I had Richard Marx was on, Steve Gorman, the drummer from the Black Crowes. So I could just talk to
Who
the
was the
people I
guy,
was talking
something Johns you had? What was it?
Oh, I had Glyn Johns is
Glyn
on.
Johns.
I don't know when this is going to air, but this week. Glyn Johns produced the Beatles' Let It Be. Mm-hmm. He produced Zeppelin 1. He produced The Who, Who's Next. He produced Clapton, Slow Hand. He produced Linda Ronstadt, The Kinks, all this stuff. So I was doing a game show. Mm-hmm. And my topic, my expertise, my category of expertise was the album, The Who, The Who's Next, because that was important to me as a kid. So at the end of this game show, they bring on a celebrity judge to see if I got the questions right. And the two guests were Glyn Johns, who produced the album, and Ethan Russell, who took the cover picture and took the pictures for Let It Be. He shot the cover for Let It Be, all the Beatles stuff and all the John Lennon stuff. And I knew these guys because I'm a freak. So I'm sitting there. It's over Zoom. I'm sitting there. They popped on, and my first words were, "Holy shit, it's you!"
Yeah.
And this guy went, "Ow!" And then the other, I went, "Holy shit, it's you too!" So they were all laughing at me, and I got all the questions right. So they sent me his email. He goes, "I'd love to be on your show," and it was great.
That is truly, when you think about, I have a particular level of admiration for the guys who are producing music in the 60s. Here's what I would say. When you watch a movie from the 60s, 70s, very few of those films hold up because a lot of them have unless it was a very good plot line, so much of the filming technology was so primitive at that point, let's say, that it looks hokey, the special effects suck, the transitions
it looks like a soap opera or something.
Yeah, it doesn't quite hold. There's very few movies that really hold up from that long ago. Again, unless it was just a tremendous story. Wizard of Oz was filmed in the 30s, which is insane. But it holds up because of the story. But with music, what I find interesting about music is you can listen to songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and it sounds pretty close. Not obviously, the production now is much, much better because it's a lot easier to get certain results out. But so much more of the recorded music, I think, from that era still holds up. Where you listen to it, you listen to a Zeppelin album, or you listen to an Eagles album or a Beatles, it doesn't sound dated. It doesn't leave you wanting for better production. You don't feel like you're missing anything when you listen to Hotel California.
In talking to Glenn, one of the things that, again, because this is just something that interests me, is that period of time, was he wasn't into he was a great engineer because he wanted to capture the performance and the sound. So you're listening to a performance, and you're listening probably through a tube desk. Pre-70s, they were all tube. It's like a Marshall. You get that tube sound out of a Marshall. You're not going to get that at a solid state.
Yeah, you're not.
So. And they only had 4 tracks when they started, so you had to make decisions right there. You can't keep changing stuff.
Yeah,
this is the way we're going to go. And the record contracts you had, you had to do 2 albums a year. It's every 6 months.
Jesus.
So what you're going to this is happening now. Bowie did Ziggy Stardust, and Woody Woodmansey, the drummer, said he didn't like to do any more than 2 takes. He goes, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And they just learned this song. He would run it down, and all right, let's do it. So it was a performance right there, and that was it. So I think that's what you're hearing, and also it was a different time. It was a broader form of communication. So we were speaking to a bigger audience. So you're also conditioned to hearing that stuff because they've been playing for years. The music's been playing, and then in the '80s, classic rock came in. So that's when the categories start. So, but it was so familiar to the people spending money. Why do you think The Who is we sell it out to the CSI series? It's familiar.
Yeah.
You can make money from it.
Yeah. It's weird when you hear about, there's Bowie, you said, didn't like to do more than 2 or 3 takes, and Kurt Cobain from Nirvana was similar, supposedly, where he didn't even want to double his vocals on certain tracks, and he was
the Beatles didn't want to do it, so they came up with ADT, which is automatic tracking, where you cock the vocals a little bit so it sounds
just
thicker,
so it sounds
delayed.
thicker.
And John Lennon goes, "I'm not singing it again." So So I think it wasn't Jeff Emmerich. It was one of the two guys that came up with ADT, where you just double the vocal.
Sometimes from the producer angle, don't you wish you just could have kicked John Lennon in the face for saying that? Like, dude, come on.
No, I would be
You're
like,
not gonna
you
sing
know what? If you
again,
only
bro?
had one song, fuck it. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of shit here. I'm gonna.
Yeah, he might know a thing or two.
I know he knows a thing or two, but it's just like, you're sitting there with a producer who knows that aspect of it, and he's like, dude, I'm telling you, if you want this to sound good, this is my job, is to make it sound good. So how about you get your ass in there and sing it one more time? Trust me, it'll be good. It'll sound good.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes I don't
It'll
know.
also be your last session.
Yeah, yeah. Unless you're putting out a #1 record album, which
Well, that's the
the
thing. It
producers
was all
did.
at that time, and I was because Glenn, when I was talking to him, is he started with the Rolling Stones. Jimmy Page lived down the block from me. Went to school with him.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like they knew each other. The first Zeppelin session, he's like, and he knew John Paul Jones, the bass player, because he was a session guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Jimmy said, would you come in and produce this? And Glenn said, in my interview, he goes, I had no idea what I was in for, but as soon as they hit the first note, it parted my hair down the middle. just the drums alone, John Paul. And it's
That's a cool thing.
it's all
Part of my hair down the middle.
it was just at that time when he was creating all this stuff in the Stones and Clapton. And he said about Eric Clapton, because when Eric plays, the music goes straight from his heart to his hands. It doesn't go through his head.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can see he's sitting in the room while that shit's happening.
Well, that's more than anything. I mean, especially the way the technology is now with recording music, it's hard for me to even imagine how difficult it must have been, but not difficult by their standards, because that's what they were used to. But this idea of like, you pretty much have to nail it. I mean, unless you can find a place in the song where the guy can cut the tape and splice it with another tape.
That's how they did it. It wasn't put a marker in, cut and paste. You had to physically cut it. If you listen to Strawberry Fields Forever, it's two different songs.
Yeah.
Around a minute in, they had to cut it on an angle. That's how they faded in and out. You cut the tape on an angle.
Jeez.
And this is one fucking guy with a razor blade going, you got it? I think so.
Yeah.
So there's an edit in there. Like
It's a lot of pressure too, because there's no Command Z on that.
No,
You can't,
Yeah.
you can't
fucked
back
it up.
up. So that's what it all was. It was that kind of urgency and one shot of it.
that kind of urgency, and also that kind of, I mean, it just not the dedication, but like I guess when you're a musician on that level and that's the standard of recording, 3 takes is probably enough, because you and your band have it locked in. You have to have it locked in.
Yeah,
to
Zeppelin
get a
1
studio
was
session.
done because Jimmy Page financed Zeppelin 1, and they were rehearsing as the New Yardbirds, because he still had the name, because he was in the last incarnation of the Yardbirds. So they had gigs in like Sweden, so they had to go to Sweden and play under the name of the New Yardbirds. So they just rehearsed the album. When they went into the studio, boom. It's like the Who's Next. That album is so much energy coming at you all at once, and it's so tight because they were rehearsing it. It was part of another rock opera that fell apart, but the songs were great, so they were rehearsing it, so they knew it. The Stones would go in for days and just is Keith high yet? All right, let's try it.
Yeah, the Stones they did have a more procured come up. I watched a documentary about them, and apparently I think they had 6 guys originally.
Yeah.
And the person who was managing them said, and it was actually very interesting, he said, we can't have more than 5 guys in the band, because that's the maximum amount of people that like young teenagers and stuff like that will remember. So they got the keyboardist, who I think at the time was like 28.
Ian Stewart.
Yeah.
He was roommates with Glenn Johns.
Yeah, and didn't they kick him out or something like that?
He really was. He was a great piano player. He really wasn't. I don't think they kicked him out as much as he goes, yeah, okay. It wasn't calling him. And Brian Jones was in the band. Then Brian Jones was one of the founding members of it.
How do you think that feels when you're a guy that was in the Rolling Stones, and you left right before they wound up becoming one of the most legendary bands of all time?
I think you feel like Pete Best, the first drummer in the Beatles.
Yeah.
But he was asked, I think it was a mutual thing. I'm not quite sure, but I think it was a mutual thing. But he also played the keyboards on Zeppelin, Rock and Roll.
I mean, how is Pete Best not kicking himself in the ass every day? Because
he didn't quit. They threw him out. So it's like he didn't really have a chance.
Yeah, but then, anytime you watch anything in regards to music, the band that you were in is constantly coming up. And you know what? Like, I know it's cliche to say, but obviously Ringo Starr wasn't exactly the best drummer ever either.
But he was the best drummer for them.
Perhaps, yeah. But I'm sure maybe Pete Best is thinking like, dude, it's not like you guys dumped me, picked up John Bonham, and became a great band. It's like you dumped me, picked up another, like passable drummer.
Yeah, I don't think he was passable. I think he was the drummer. It's like Charlie Watts. Charlie Watts is a great drummer. He's not flashy.
What band is he from?
He was the original drummer in the Stones.
Oh, okay.
Charlie Watts, his time, he was a jazz drummer. He was just behind the beat, and it was perfect. It was perfect for what they did. And I think Ringo was perfect for what he did. They had to force him to do a solo on the medley on Abbey Road in the back. He's like, I don't like drum solos. All right, it's done. It's over.
Who was telling me the other week that apparently Ringo didn't play a lot of the studio sessions? Was it Matt Brown?
I don't know. He played. I know he didn't.
He's
play.
a known liar. He was supposed to be here for this. I can't
said he
trust
was gonna
that.
be
I
here.
can't trust that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that said he was going to be here also told me Ringo didn't play his own stuff.
No,
So-
Ringo did. The one he wasn't on is the Ballad of John and Yoko. Paul is playing that, and I think back in the USSR.
He's playing the drums on that?
Paul played the drums on that, and Paul played the drums, I believe, on Back in the USSR.
Wow. Yoko Ono, the most iconic bitchy girlfriend of all time, I think.
Yeah, but they were on their way out. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't help she's sitting on the amp.
Yeah. John, I'm not going to lie. I'm sorry I recommended punching John Lennon in the face earlier on the podcast, but